NOS4A2.
What is up, everyone, and welcome back to our NOS4A2 recap show, where we break down the latest episode of AMC's new series based on the book by Joe Hill. I am one of your hosts, Griffin Schiller, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Mr. Mike Johnson of Real School. Mike, I feel like we just saw each other, right?
Weird, right? We're wearing the same outfits like a week later.
Listen, I've got some sort of graphic design on mine, so it's not completely the same as your shirt.
Okay. Yeah, well, no, I've got a lot of white V-necks. It could be that I do
white
the same.
V-necks. Yeah, listen, they're very, very fashionable. I get it. They're very versatile. You can wear them with just about anything.
Exactly.
And as a result, this show is now going to be a show about white V-necks. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Take care. No,
on the white V-neck show.
No. So we decided to record these two episodes back to back. Obviously, episode 5 recap and then episode 6 recap. So even though you're getting this a week later, we already saw episode 6, so spoilers. But yeah, so we're going to be breaking down episode number 6, which is called The Dark Tunnels. Now, if you remember from last week, we weren't the biggest fans of episode 5. We thought it was okay, but it was kind of lacking a bit. So episode 6 hopefully was going to make up for it, and it's actually directed by the same guy who did episode 5, which is Tim Southam, and I think for the most part it was a better episode. Actually, not even for the most part, just like it was a better episode. What I really liked about it was how much backstory we got of Manx and his abilities, and yeah, there was a little bit of exposition, but they did it in a way where it wasn't annoying, and we got to learn a little bit more about what's her name, Jolene, yeah. Jolene, yep, her relationship with Manx, and then like her abilities, a little bit about Christmas Land, and just like strong creatives in general, which was all really cool world building stuff, and they did it in an interesting way. So I was very appreciative of that. Mike, what did you think about episode 6?
Yeah, I would say night and day compared to the last one. And, like we had discussed last week, a couple minutes ago, that basically, that episode was a necessary evil, right? We had to get it because things had to be pushed forward. Things had to be developed, but there wasn't all that much of a horror element or a sci-fi element or anything like that. It was very much a character-driven episode, which good shows need, right? And the writing wasn't subpar by any means. It was just one of those episodes where you kind of go, okay, well, we got to move on. Let's get to some more exciting stuff, especially considering now we are 60% into this show. We're going downhill, right? So
let's go.
Things got to move a little bit. So
Yeah, which I think it was weird because this episode was like pretty not self-contained, but it was pretty contained. They didn't go to a lot of places, but like I felt like a lot happened. And some of the stuff that I didn't really care about was Vic, speaking to her shrink and whatnot, because as we know, she gets she voluntarily checks herself into this psych ward, and so some of that stuff I was just kind of like, oh, all right. I mean, she's obviously not crazy, but everyone thinks she's crazy, and so we have to kind of find a way for her to get out of there. But what surprised me was the direction it took. They took it in a way where like she finagled her way out, but it helped her overcome the trauma that she had been going through, which we'll get into all of that a little bit later on. But basically, if you're new to this show, the way it works is Mike kind of goes through the episode and we stop and talk about each section or the most important sections or just anything we really feel like talking about pertaining to the episode. And so I'm going to hand it over to Mike, and he's going to take us through the episode.
Sometimes it's even the sections of the episode we can remember because sometimes you get episodes where you go, that thing happened.
Right. As evident from last week, I actually remembered a lot of stuff. I remembered a lot more than I thought I did for such an unremarkable episode. So
thank God you were there, because you reminded me of half the stuff.
But it was so weird because it was our longest episode to date. And I was like, this is like the longest episode for the least interesting. Well, maybe not least interesting, but just a very middle of the road episode. So, anyways, let's get into The Dark Tunnels.
That's right. So yeah, as you had mentioned at the end of the previous episode as well, that Vic had volunteered to admit herself for a psychological evaluation. A little bit of a trope again, because we had talked about that detective in the previous episode. She rears her. I don't want to say ugly. That sounds mean, but
so
she rears her head.
She just rears her head. Yeah.
The character is ugly. The actress. There's nothing against her whatsoever.
No, she's perfectly fine. It's just such a poorly written character.
It is. Yeah. There's just It's funny because the Kings are anything but unoriginal. I mean, like they base a lot of their stuff off of classic horror tropes, but at the same time, I find that they always put their own spin on things, right?
Sure.
So when things like this come up in either Stephen King's writing or Joe Hill's writing, I'm a little disappointed with it, because I feel like they certainly are more creative than that. So when they fall on kind of story beats like this, I question whether or not it was actually from the book's influence, or whether it was the television show just saying, okay, this is what we need to do.
Sure,
This is my only really deterrent of this episode. My only little critique is, okay, Vic has to check herself in.
She feels pressure from her dad, I think, which is causing more friction between their relationship. Because he's supposed to be the guy who understands her, who believes her in everything she's saying, and so we kind of get a little bit, of her mom coming out through him, and just like the fact that, like, hey, listen, I've been through this myself. Maybe it's something that could be good for you, and she kind of looks at that as a betrayal. I mean, I think one of the biggest character moments for Vic was when she just like grabs the thing, signs it, and then she hands it back to him, but she doesn't look at him. That was really powerful, and I really it's once again just showing the rocky relationship that is kind of formed between her and her dad, who she was supposed to be like best friends with.
Yeah, and she has that good line too, where she asks, "Is this best for me, or is this best for you?" And I can't remember the girlfriend's name. I think it's something else. But anyways, and he kind of says, "Well, maybe it's best for everybody." Right, and that's definitely a dick line where you go, "Dad, come on, man, like help her out."
It's your daughter, man. Come on.
Yeah. So we do go through a little bit of a stereotypical trope with this psychological evaluation, and the doctor who's saying, these characters, this Charlie Manx, he's clearly a manifestation of abuse, and these worlds that you create to escape, and we have to deal with this, and he's a very understanding character. I never felt like he was this kind of like evil, twisted doctor, but once in a while,
absolutely not. Yeah.
You get that plot device where they say, well, if you don't do this, we can hold you longer. And it's that classic, like, she's like, I volunteered to be here. And he's like, well, the law states if you don't do this, or you don't take the meds. And I go, well, why do people volunteer to do this in the first place?
Exactly. Well, the thing I did like was, he kind of broke that a little bit when she was like, looking out the window of the door, ready to leave. And he was like, he said, did you feel pressured to check yourself in?
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because he's seeing that she doesn't necessarily come from the best home life, and he's talking to her like a normal person, and obviously he's kind of coming to the conclusion that she's not insane, but maybe just has some trouble back home that's affecting her, and so he kind of I guess appeals to her better. He gives her the benefit of the doubt, which is refreshing to see from like a character like that.
Yeah, it's needed too in Vic's journey, because as we know, at this point, Maggie's in the hospital. Maggie's supposed to be in surgery because she was hit by the Wraith in the last episode. So, as we kind of mentioned in the last one, Vic is really losing all of her allies. So to have this doctor who genuinely seems like he wants to help her and, has her best interests in mind. You're right. It's good. So, but he, once again, it's just kind of a placeholder, because we really get to the meat and potatoes of the episode when she is put in the same hospital room as Jolene, who we saw in episode 3 for the first time, which was my favorite episode, maybe second favorite now, because, this one's pretty good.
Oh, really? So this is interesting. We forgot to start with the most important thing, which was the pre-title sequence, which I loved. The pre-title sequence was so important, shed some light on the person Manx used to be, and you know, because we already had seen that encounter he had with Jolene, I believe in episode 3, and so this, when they were like talking about like the relationship they used to have, this clarified that, and we see that what he's doing with Vic, he was trying to do before, and you know, we see that he does have a conscience to him, and he's trying to ultimately be a good person and help these kids out. But he's this interaction kind of twists him, I guess, in a way, and he's not like completely disfigured yet, and he doesn't even have like the vampire nails or the teeth, and so this is like transformation, I guess, which is really interesting. It had a super 50s aesthetic, which I loved. Anyways, that pre-title sequence, maybe my second favorite we've seen so far.
It is always good, you know, when you're halfway through a season, to not only introduce new characters, as long as they're going to pay off, but more importantly, give us new information about characters that we've seen now for half the season. And you're absolutely right. And it's interesting seeing, for all rights and, you know, all intents and purposes, we're seeing human Charlie Manx.
We are.
Because God knows he's not really human anymore, right? So and so now you're right, absolutely right. It's very important. It sheds a little bit of light of at least who he was. A little unexpected for me too, because I wasn't sure where they were going to start in terms of the history of Charlie, right? So it was kind of interesting. And he starts off really sweet, and he's kind of got the 50s greaser hair, and you know, he's looking all like Quinto-esque charming.
Oh, of course. Well, and it brings up the interesting point, which is this, you know, the relationship with his car. You know, he and we were talking about this beforehand. Granted, I have not finished the book yet. I'm maybe like halfway through, and it's been a very long time since you've read the book. So if we say something that's incorrect, just, you know, we apologize. But something interesting was that it seems as though his ability to drain the life out of these children, that's not his creative talent per se, you know? It's almost like his creative, his strong creative ability is like the manifestation of like Christmas Land to like save these kids or something like that. So it really shows his fall from grace, if you will, you know, without explicitly showing it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because, you know, the great thing about this episode, and we'll touch on it more as we go along, is, you know, we start to learn a lot more about what creatives can do, what powers they have aside from just being able to travel either through shorter ways or having the knives, which we know Jolene has the roller skates, which we got a little bit of a hint at, you know, episodes ago. But in this one, we actually see a young Jolene, you know, disappear into another place through whatever dimension they use, you know, all this kind of stuff with the roller skates. So that's cool. Yeah. And as you mentioned, you know, with the show anyways, we're not quite sure what the rules are with Manx yet. But the fact that we're now thinking about what is his creative power, you know, what's the relationship with the car? Is the car part of the power? Is the car separate? You know, why did he become a succubus? Was this because of what happened? Was it because of this symbiotic relationship he has with the car? You know, all these kind of things. And this is what's good about this episode, is it gets you to start reinvesting yourself into thinking about these characters, right? And it's not necessarily they're throwing this huge twist at you where you're like, oh my God, the character is nobody that I actually thought they were before. They're presenting new things for you to kind of unravel slowly, which I definitely appreciate.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah, as we had discussed, so they are now in the same hospital room, Vic and Jolene, which again is like a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina. It's a little convenient, right? You just go.
Well, it was like the second she checked herself into the psych ward, I was like, oh, okay, so now we're gonna bring in Jolene, and there's gonna be some confrontation there.
Which I find hilarious. It's like, it's not like a group therapy thing. It's not like they're out, you know, for like fresh air in a group walk session. It's like they're literally roommates. And
it's just like literally, no, we'll just stick her there. And I'm like, okay. I mean, Sure,
So
whatever.
exactly, you accept it. Yeah. So one of the orderlies just basically says, "Well, you hit the jackpot with getting roommates." She hasn't said anything in like months, and of course, as we saw in episode 3, when Manx comes to visit Jolene, she doesn't say a word. Right? She's traumatized, or there's something going on with her. And of course, as soon as the orderly leaves, she kind of bolts up and she's waving Vic over. Vic comes in close and she says, "Charlie Manx."
Yeah.
So connection automatically, yeah. which is cool. And so what's great about this is they start to develop a very quick relationship. What I really liked about this relationship is it was never expositional. It was never what Maggie has served in this so far. And that's, we had talked about how Maggie serves a purpose as the mentor figure, as the one who presents the information to the audience and to Vic. And so she hasn't really had a chance to develop as a character. Jolene had the same purpose, but I found the writing was so much
better. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just a little more subdued and a little more cleverly done, creatively done. So the relationship that they start to develop is that Vic right away realizes that she has to help Jolene because, Jolene's able to communicate in a lot of ways, like how she was hurt by Manx, how she knows him. They realize that they're both strong creatives. So Vic, kind of helps her out with the pills because at one time an orderly comes in, says, or a nurse comes in, says you need to take them.
Yep.
The nurse leaves and dumps Vic dumps the pills. And again, it's kind of convenient because the nurse doesn't believe her. And she's like, "I'm going to dose her." And Vic's like, "No, don't do it. I already gave her the pills."
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, "Oh, okay, the nurse is going to get fired," but still. So they're able to take off, and they're able to use Jolene's wheelchair as the knife as well. So we start to once again learn new things, that there isn't just one knife, or there doesn't just have to be one knife for each strong creative to take the shorter way, that it's, whatever they can kind of manifest with enough energy. They go into the dark tunnels, as the episode is called, which seems to be somewhere that Jolene has visited before, even when she was in the hospital, because there's other hospital equipment laying around in different places. And we start to learn a lot more of what we had kind of seen, like you had said in that teaser, the pre-credit teaser, where she had a relationship with Manx, how he started to lose his soul, how this is the price that he has to pay, because all strong creatives pay a price, much like Vic's eye. So, some really good stuff. And again, I never found with Maggie, where Maggie's almost looking right at the audience being like, this is what the rules are. Yeah. This was just very naturally, it came up and you kind of go, "Oh, okay, good."
Well, and the thing was I think it tied in a lot to Jolene personally as a character, whereas Maggie was literally spewing exposition for the sake of explaining things.
Yeah.
The way it was written with Jolene was she was drawing from past experiences in her relationship, not necessarily for exposition, but just to kind of take us through her experience, I guess. It was a different approach, and I think it just paid off in dividends here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I really enjoyed the part where she has collected hundreds of pictures of missing children posters,
all over the walls, right?
Yeah. So you see the effect that he's had over the past 60, 70 years, right?
Yeah. And it's really the first time where you take a step back and you're like, oh my God, he has abducted this many people, walls of pictures, that amount of people. It's, and it keeps going too. It's not just one little compartmentalized area. It's a very large area. And so it's the weight of his actions really just, it sinks in that moment. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Really kind of, you start to realize what scale or how long he's been able to get away with it and all this. Yeah. Which is interesting because, later on, when Vic talks to Maggie, and we'll get into that, you kind of think, oh man, he's been doing it for this long. How much longer can he keep doing it? Right. All that kind of stuff. So, but my favorite part of this entire episode is how Jolene introduces the fact that, not only can he use a different knife, but strong creatives also have
different quote unquote magic tricks. So it seems like they all seem to have the same kind of base powers where they can use a knife, they can use shorter ways, they can manifest things from their imagination, how, like Vic does with the bridge, like Manx does with Christmas Land, into the real world. But they also each have their own separate gift, or maybe gifts. And then Jolene walks her into this room, the beautiful, and again, it just reminds me so much of his father's writing, or the films that were based off Stephen King stuff, where this huge wall is just pure white noise, and it's not creating any sound. It's just a wall of white noise, and I really like that imagery. And so Jolene says, "Are you ready to go on a trip?" Grabs Vic's hand, and their consciousness leaves their body. And you can see it kind of just poof into that wall, and you're wondering, okay, what's happening? It's the only fun, like, I kind of giggled indirectly at that part because we had seen how frail Jolene is. And poor, like, 90-year-old woman probably literally just drops to the floor. And I go, oh, no, that's how you break a hip. Like, come on, lady, you can sit down first.
Yeah, I'm just happy they didn't actually show them, like, floating or, like, in ghost form, because that would have taken me out of it real
You're right,
fast.
yeah. It was very tastefully done, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, especially because, the special effects were present, but not over the top, which is something else I kind of like about this show, too. I mean, like, a lot of it is practical. When you see Manx age, it's different steps. Yeah. So yeah, the really cool thing is their eyes are kind of glazed over with that same white noise. And then you realize that they can travel, but in a different way than they have with their knives, and they're not physically there. Yeah, it's kind of like they're ghosts. And Jolene definitely has control over this because she can manipulate the radio in the Wraith. She kind of blows in Manx's ear at one point. And he's getting freaked out. And what I loved is, like, she's done this before, and you can tell because right away he's like, Jolene, like, I know it's you.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. It's like, this is the first time you see him, like, freaked out and, like, cornered, where he's like, what is going on here? Because he thought he took care of her. And so, like, seeing that just, like, paranoia from him was great on so many levels.
Yeah, definitely. First time we see a little bit of vulnerability from him, right? And so she's really screwing with him. You can see the Vic's kind of spirit is watching from a distance, and Jolene kind of messes with him a little bit more, goes into his engine and starts to overheat the engine. And so the point, where he's coughing in the car, he has to get out. You see that the engine is definitely heating up too much, and it ages him. It ages Manx just, like, instantly. And he even goes beyond what we've seen him as before. Like, you can imagine, he looks like a 90-year-old in a lot of the episodes where he does that stupid voice. But this was like, he was this close to death. Like, he was just completely hunched over and, could barely lift his head. And, so he grabs a hose, and he can barely hang on as he's putting out the fire in the engine. I thought that was really cool because we see, again, that symbiotic relationship with the car, how when it gets damaged, he's toast. So you kind of thought, oh, okay, she was pretty close, but not close enough. And I love the end of that scene where he's staring and he thinks he's talking to Jolene. He goes, I know it's you, you little whore. Which again, you kind of go, that's not something nice you say to somebody you wanted to get engaged to 60 years ago. But the great thing is Vic's spirit is staring him in the face. Right. And so it's kind of interesting once again where, you question a few things. Like, again, what's the relationship with the car? Is that part of his power? Does he have a separate power? Does Vic have a separate power? Can she start to control things? Maybe she learned this one from Jolene. Maybe she can do that one again. But, the important thing is that we do learn his weakness. And here we are in the 6th episode. We know we have 4 left. So Vic learns his weakness, which is hugely important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
No. I mean, you were pretty spot on with that. No, I think, I mean, just seeing you're right, how vulnerable he was, seeing the parallels between Vic and Jolene, especially when he like confronts her like that. The other thing I really liked was how this was also one of the first instances where it was like kind of like creepy. Like watching him age was like super. I'm not gonna say scary because it wasn't scary, but it was yeah. I mean, I guess that was a perfect word. Creepy. It was probably one of the creepiest things we've seen from the show so far. So that was definitely appreciated, and like the makeup looks great, and as always. It's just, you know, Quinto's voice, which just kind of takes you out of it ever so slightly. But yeah. So seeing that, more the world building and understanding his weakness and the relationship with the car is explored a little bit more. And then Jolene getting her, I guess it's her getting revenge on him for what he did earlier was nice, because as we're going to get to, she dies.
Right.
So it was kind of nice for her last like little action to just be like sticking it to him, even if it doesn't kill him. But
yeah, it was she's got a very quick arc. If you think about, she only got 3 episodes of which she was in 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially with this one, it was important that she wasn't a one-trick pony or just in it right away and then left. She left her mark, and I felt it was a real journey. It was something that will affect the plot. It wasn't just like, here's grandma with magical powers and then we'll never see her or hear from her again. You know, she passed the torch to Vic. She kind of reassured Vic of what she needs to do.
Right. Well, and that's the big thing, is like this whole interaction really helps Vic understand what's happening. You're right, what she has to do, and it allows her to overcome the trauma of the past couple episodes,
which is important because, you know, you can see throughout this episode she's still not dealing with it. She's very frustrated, you know, and even when the doctor has her best interest in mind, you know, he is still in a sense an antagonist because he's in the way of trying to get her what she wants.
Right.
And even though she's like, you know, starting to kind of deal with it, but it's still, you know, it's not going to work because nobody believes her. And even when she kind of tells the truth, right, he's still very hesitant because he can tell she's lying just to tell him what she, you know, he wants to hear. So it's interesting. Yeah. And that scene with Jolene when she passes away, you know, and she says to Vic, I don't need to fight with you. My fight is done. Right. And says to her, you know, he was afraid of you. Like, he came to find me because he thought that somebody this powerful posed a threat, and he thought it was me. And she's like, but now I know it's you.
Yeah,
like,
so
you got this.
It really shows. Yeah, it was just that boost of confidence she needed, because she's kind of been unsure the whole thing this entire time, very conflicted. And so, yeah, I mean, this interaction was truthfully all the ammunition she needed to just go forth and you know, use her abilities to the fullest to stop him. Right,
exactly. Yeah. So, end of the episode, basically, we're already there. This one went by fast.
It really, this felt like such a fast episode. I don't know if it was shorter, but I don't know.
I think it was just. It moved so well. There was so much to take in.
Yeah.
So much visual interest as well, which is why, you know, it's one of my favorite episodes as well. But yeah, and like I said, it was a journey that we saw in several different characters. So basically, you know, Vic goes back to the hospital, starts to really tell the doctor what he wants to hear, but, you know, he's still skeptical, but at the same time, it's enough where he says, I'll release you, but you have to do this. And she immediately goes to see Maggie. You know, Maggie is deeply bruised from the car wreck last time.
She is alive, as we suspected. Yeah,
exactly. And so the funny thing is, you know, Vic says to her, like, I know what we need to do, and I know how we can stop them. And once again, this one small little deterrent, you know what I'm going to say? Maggie just gets in the way, man. She gets in the way.
Yeah, it's like a role reversal. It's like now she's like, nah, I'm done.
Honestly.
It's just
that
like,
switch in character was, it came out a little too much. I know you got hit by a car. I know you were freaked out.
Right.
But
it wasn't the fact that she was hit by the car. It was the fact that she was hit by the car and she saw the kid that she used to babysit or whatever. I forget his name, but she saw him
Danny,
with the demon teeth and everything, like standing over her and whatnot, which shows once again the connection between the car, Manx, Christmas Land, and all that sort of thing, and how it's all like a symbiotic relationship. So I thought that was a very interesting thing about how the car itself is able to get into the minds of these characters. Yeah,
that's true. So it's interesting because you get her motivation, but at the same time, how much did you accept it? I couldn't accept it other than what I felt it like her turn, because it was, she's the character that for 5 episodes has been like, Vic, you can do it. We're going to get him. Let's go. And then she gets hit by the car and she gets a little freaked out. And like you said, she's being messed with. She also brings up the fact that, hey, the car drove itself.
Right.
That freaked her out. But part of me was like,
she should have expected that. Like, she knows that sort of thing. Like, I would understand if they had showed the kid standing over her body like that, but we didn't see that, so we didn't experience it with her. So it's just kind of like, of course you're gonna write her like this, because then there has to be some sort of, Vic has to be the one to turn her and make her realize, no, you were doing the right thing, and so that they can team up together to defeat. And so, like, it's cliched writing. And I agree with you. I mean, it's not, if they had done her turn better, then maybe I would have been able to buy into it. But I mean, she also knew what she was getting herself into. So I'm struggling a bit. Yeah. That
was my biggest thing too, is when you have this character, as we've talked about, who is a little bit of a trope because she presents the reality of the world.
Right.
For that character to question something she hadn't seen before, right, or didn't expect it. And I'm like, we're talking about a world that she knows so well, where she knows the different type of creatives, or she calls herself a medium, so there are people with different types of powers and what they can do. Would you really be freaked out by a car that could drive itself? Would you be freaked out that the kid is now a succubus? Because you expected her to know that. And I really got the idea that in the first few episodes when she's talking to the sheriff, that she knows exactly what's going on with that.
Really? See, I'm actually on the other end. I think she knows that the kid is missing, but she's still holding on to that hope that he is alive and like nothing has happened to him. And like that whole instance and seeing him was the turning point where she's kind of like lost all hope. And so framing it like that, her mentality at the end of the episode makes sense. It's just I didn't see her interaction with the kid, and so I'm not able to buy into that whole turn. I feel like that was literally that was the only missing piece for me. I mean, aside from it just being like a cliche thing and like, oh, of course this is gonna happen. It wasn't so much the fact that the car was driving itself. It was the kid that she personally knew that really sparked her whole, drive in this show is dangling over here looking like a little demon. And because we don't see that, I feel like that would have been an important thing to see. Like, even if it's just a flash,
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, we both questioned it for different reasons, and I think that's the only thing. But having said that, if that is the only little bit of weak cliche writing that you get in this episode, because like we said, that stuff with Jolene was very subtly done, right? Yeah, it was much better. So, overall, very effective episode. And the end of it is really we just see that Vic is taking control a little bit more, where she flushes the drugs down the sink because she doesn't want to be numbed like Jolene was. So there are going to be repercussions going forward in terms of what might happen with her relationship with Maggie, or what might happen with her relationship with her parents, all this kind of stuff. But the important thing is, we really see that Vic is pretty much committed to helping, because like you said, she got that little bit of confidence instilled. She knows perhaps she has more in terms of abilities to be able to stop. And more importantly, she knows how to stop Manx.
Yes.
So here we have 4 episodes left, and looking forward to what's happening now.
Yeah, I am too. I feel like from here on out, we can't have any more episodes like 5, like 1 and 2. We need to be done with those, and we need to just focus on going full speed ahead, and really like ramping up each episode until ultimately things come to a head, which I'm hoping is what they're going to do from now on. You know, I mean, we have 4 episodes left. It's not a lot of time, but it can be a lot of time if you use it effectively, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yep, there you have it, guys. Those are our thoughts on episode number 6, The Dark Tunnels. The most important thing is, though, what did you all think? Be sure to let us know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section below. Did you love this episode? Did you hate it? All that good stuff. Just get down there and let's have a lively discussion. As always, if you liked this video, be sure to like it, share with your friends, and subscribe to this channel for more movie and television-related content on a weekly basis. Mr. Mike Johnson, thank you as always for joining me. Where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Real School on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Just remember, there's 2 E's in Real School. I won't even make the dad joke reference.
Nope, we're done with it.
Get it.
Nope.
Yep, you all get it at this point. If you don't know how to find Real School, then I don't know how to help you at this point. So sadly, it's all yours.
All right. You can always like Men vs. Movies on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter simply by searching Men vs. Movies. And lastly, if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, that's going to do it for this recap, guys, and we'll catch you back next week. Take care.